Hey everyone, Jacob here, and I just want to say this is a second collaboration between me and my buddy Dave from Interpreting the Stars, and this time we're covering the Hills Have Eyes remake. I just want you to say thank you so much for watching, and also, if you can, his video starts right now. And also, before, I just want to say this because I already shot the video, I just didn't do an intro for it. So I just want to say thanks, Dave, so much for doing this. I'm so excited. I hope to collab with you many, many more times in the future. Thank you so much. Cannot wait to watch your review for The Hills Have Eyes. Awesome. Let's go.
Hey, it's Dave back on Jacob's channel to discuss the remake to The Hills Have Eyes, which is also titled The Hills Have Eyes. The Hills Have Eyes essentially tells the same exact story of that of the original film. That is, a family traversing through the desert get into a crash and are left stranded while very strange people watch from a distance, slowly making their plans to kill the family. Thanks again to Jacob for inviting me over to talk about this series. I think that this is the one that I probably saw in the past, though it was long enough ago for me not to really remember any details. Now, remakes in general are often regarded as trash by a lot of people, no matter what genre you're even referring to, but oftentimes, horror remakes get the most hate. I'm not entirely sure how people regard this one since I didn't really look up the critical reception, but in my humble opinion, this is how you do a remake right, as it pays homage to the original and essentially just does everything exactly the same, just better, with a much more modern approach. Seriously, this movie is pretty much a carbon copy of that of the first film from 1977. It just makes more sense and is carried out a lot more smoothly and creepily. First, the acting. I won't say that what we're watching here is Oscar-worthy, but it does feel natural. There's an air of fakeness to that 70s film where you feel more 70s era cheese than anything, and this one felt, I don't know, normal. I believe that these characters were related. I felt their annoyance when they got stranded in the desert. I felt their fear when they realized that they were being stalked by the people in the hills. I felt it all, and that feeling alone makes the film that much better than its predecessor, in which, I was bored with that one. I was never bored with this one. Actually, I felt those thrills. I felt the building tension when these people were being watched. I believed the reasonings behind why these people were in the hills in the first place. The first was kind of confusing with that exposition. This one connected it to nuclear test sites and radiation deformities, and that made 100% more sense. It's still not super original because other movies like it seem to do the same exact thing. The creatures in this movie, for instance, seem like the same creatures in Wrong Turn to me. Well, whatever. It still made more sense. Honestly, this movie all around, even though it did the same thing as the original, just did everything better. Maybe most people prefer the original. Again, I don't know, because I didn't really look up the critical reception of either. And Jacob probably knows more about that than I do, but I can only assume people prefer this one. But again, it's not the best movie in the world, nor was it ever. Do I consider it scary? Not really. Maybe scarier than the original, but that's not really saying much of anything. I don't really see myself rewatching either of the movies. If I had to pick, it would undoubtedly be this one, though, but I think at the end of the day, I'm sure I'd just pick something else out instead. Looking at my final score, this remake scored higher in everything, making it a superior film, but again, I'm not gonna claim it's the best thing since sliced bread. My unbiased score, for instance, was fair, but I'm not going to say it's a masterful film. Nice visuals in terms of practical effects, makeup, and decent chemistry between everybody, but as this is mostly a slasher between monsters and a family, everyone mostly blends in together. The monsters blend in together, and the family kind of blends in together. No monster is more important than the other. No family member is more important than the other. So in that case, you don't really care so much on who specifically lives or dies, because they all kind of blend in together. This score is 64%. My bias score, just how I felt about it, was a little bit higher because I did enjoy myself and found this film to be decent at the end of the day. Not my favorite, mind you, but decent. This score is 74%, meaning that when we combine the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 69%. 69 out of 100 possible stars, or a C+ letter grade. If you remember, my score for the first film was only 55%. So this is scored significantly higher than that, but neither are glowingly awesome films either. Take that as you will, and I'll stop hogging all your time, Jacob. So I'll let you get back into it, and thanks again for having me, and until the next time, peace out.
Hills Have Eyes 2006 remake is directed by Alexandria Everja and is written by Greg Riveroso and Alexandria Everja. And the movie stars Aaron Stanford, Laura Ortiz, Vanessa Shaw, Dan Beard, Emily DeRegan, Michael Bailey Smith, Robert Joy, and Ted Levine. The movie is essentially a 2006 remake of the original 77 movie. The movie has difference and changes from the original movie, such as there are no longer they're just people with like scars, you know, the Hills people. They're actually mutants caused by an atomic bomb that was dropped using bombs in New Mexico. And so what the people is they went and hid inside the mines, and because of radiation and everything, and the people that were pregnant, the radiation made them have mutant babies, and so these mutant babies grew up and deformed, and they all looked deformed and mutated, and so they're going around killing and eating and stealing whatever they can to survive. And this one, unlike the original one, there is no like military base that like they keep referencing. This is just, it's an empty, completely abandoned desert, because you do see that there was some people testing at the beginning of the movie, testing on this. Like they were testing the water because it was radiation, but I think that was 15 years before the events, before the beginning, before after the credits. So like you see at the beginning, they're testing for radiation, and I think that's like 15 or 20 years before, like, you know, the credits start rolling, and then we see like the family in California. Because if this was just happening right now, it would not. They would be like sick, coughing, and everything because it's radiation. And so I will say this movie is really, I love this movie. I think it's really good, and apparently Wes Craven did too, because he was actually the one who sought out the director for this movie, Alexandria Everja, I think his name is. Sorry if I mispronounced his name. He is a foreign filmmaker. I think he is like French or he is Italian. He is a guy who directed a movie called High Tension, and apparently Marianne Madeline, Wes Craven's producing partner, who went all his company and everything, looked at that movie and said, because Wes Craven was seeking out a director to find the movie, to find someone who could remake The Hills Have Eyes, because he saw how successful the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003 was, and then the 2005 Amityville horror film. So he was looking for somebody that could remake his movie, but tell a different story, but also keeping true to what he created. And so they found this filmmaker, and he made this wonderful movie. On paper it feels like the same movie, but then once you see it, it's a different aspect of it, you know. Different light kind of thing, you know. I mean, like, I was watching this movie and I was just like, you know what? I was like, this movie on paper is the same, but when you watch, it's not. You know, like just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003 remake is on paper it's the same movie, but then when you watch it, it's not. Like, I will say there are certain events in this movie that happen differently than they don't happen. Like, one person dies in this movie that doesn't die in the original, and I'm like, wow. And also, the movie has, you know, like when the original movie, I forgot to include this in my last review, in the original movie, the movie was inspired by Wes Craven. Him and his wife were motorcycling down the highway like in the 70s on dirt bikes, and then they went and saw these people in the desert, and someone shot a gun near Wes Craven, and Wes Craven threatened legal action against them, and the guy told Wes Craven, you know, I could kill you and bury your body in a salt mine, and no one would ever find your body. Wes Craven's so impressed by that, you know, he was so frightened and shocked by that, he was like, you know what, imagine if this was a movie. And then, you know, that inspired The Hills Have Eyes, the original movie. So then when he went to remake it, turns out there's a completely different, the director of this movie, when he and his co-writing partner were writing this movie, it's actually inspired by the origins of some Scottish cannibals in the 1800s called Alexander Sawney Bean, who would go around murdering people in Scotland and just murdering them, and he would like feed because apparently he had inbred children, he had inbred offsprings, and so he'd go around murdering them and feeding like the people to this inbred offsprings, and so it's really grotesque, I thought, and so that's one thing like that inspired this movie. Apparently I'm also inspired Wrong Turn as well. And this movie kind of does in some ways resemble Wrong Turn 2006, or not 2006, Wrong Turn 2003. This came out in 2006. This kind of inspired. Like, if you also there's funny coincidences. Okay, Wrong Turn came out in 2003. All right, and it's about a bunch of inbred hillbillies in the woods that are going around killing and eating people. Hills Have Eyes 2006 remake is about a bunch of mutants that kind of basically are inbred hillbillies, but they go around basically stealing, eating, killing people. And I will say, then they remade Wrong Turn in 2020, and that they're not inbred or hillbillies. They're basically mountain men who go around basically that look just like the Hills Have Eyes. They look just the original, just look like normal people that just go around like stealing and like we have a foundation and stuff like that. Just like in the 77 film of Hills Have Eyes, they're not inbred or mutants. They just look normal with scars. That's the same thing with the remake of Wrong Turn. I'm like, are they stealing off of each other's remakes? I'm like, are you serious? Like, did the Wrong Turn people see, like, what? Did the Wrong Turn remake people see the original Hills Have Eyes? They were going to make it like that because they stole the original Wrong Turn from the Hills Have Eyes remake. That'll teach them. Make a worse version of Wrong Turn. That'll teach them. But no, that's the one thing I thought was just funny. That's just something funny. Also, here's a fun fact. This movie was actually shot, the first film was shot in New Mexico. Well, actually, it wasn't shot in New Mexico. Like, some of the exterior shots were in New Mexico, but the first film, Wes Craven's film, was shot in California, like in the desert parts of California. And because they went and looked in New Mexico, and they were scouting in California where they shot the first film, well, it turns out in California now there's a bunch of industrial buildings being built there, and in New Mexico, lots of people, it's habited now where lots of people live there and stuff, and it's going to be really hard to just like shoot there when you see everything, like you see people and background shots. It'd just be a pain. So, which is funny because the filmmakers that made this remake said, why don't we go to Morocco? And they're like, well, because we're in a war right now, and they said we don't want terrorists or insurgents to come over here and kill us or something. And so they're all right, we'll shoot in California. But then they couldn't, so then the filmmakers got their wish, like, we're going to Morocco, and they're like, yay! Which I'm sure the producers were like, we're not excited. Yeah, and I think one thing is, this one is, they are, and one thing I've noticed is, if you watch the movie and behind the scenes, all the mutants have their own unique look behind them. Like, Pluto has like a deformed eye, Ruby has like a muffed up jaw, and then he has a, what's it called, Mars has a thing on his lip, it's, I forget what it's called. It's one of those things that some people get, but they all have their own unique trait. Just one thing, I forgot what it's called. It's not, is it a cyst? It's not, I forget what it's called. It's one thing that some people have. It's a cleft lip. Yeah, he has a cleft lip. And I thought that was like, they all have unique things, which that's grateful to Greg Nicotero, who, Greg Nicotero, KMB Effects Company, who would go later on to work on the Walking Dead series, who is now a producer, director, and does all the makeup effects for Walking Dead, the whole entire universe of Walking Dead. And so this is actually before Walking Dead. He actually did all the makeup effects for all the mutants, and some of them, yes, he admitted, yeah, they did all the makeup effects and everything, and he even played the mutant with the shotgun, has the halo on his head, who later gets killed. That's Greg Nicotero in makeup effects, because he loves doing the makeup effects, like putting inside of a costume like that. Greg Nicotero loves doing stuff like that. But yeah, they said because of like the mutants, because of like doing all the stuff, and they couldn't because of the safety of the actors. Like one scene, if you watch the fight scene between Pluto and our lead male character, and like the third act of the movie, that they said part of it's CGI, the eye of his CGI, because they said he was using a real weapon, and because if he swings it, he might hurt the actor, and so they said they had to CGI. So they used some CGI for enhancements on some of the actors because of safety reasons. So like they would do half the effect of like that, because usually like when up close and personal, they're like, we use real shots, but then when it's a fight scene, they would actually do half the makeup, and then they would put like CGI it later. So that way, they said it would be safety. So that way, the actor, when he's swinging the weapon, he won't try to kill. He actually doesn't kill or injure the other actor. And which all the actors do have it. And also, Papa Jupiter also even has a deformity as well. It's not in the movie because they cut it. But if you actually, you may be able to see it if you really look, and it's on the behind the scenes on the Blu-ray as an Easter egg. If you find it has a large, Papa Jupiter has a large prosthetic twin that you can really see. That's what his deformity is. He has a large prosthetic twin. Think Guado in Total Recall, the original, and which I will say, like the mutants, like in the little children, it turns out the little children are actually CGI. The children in the movie are actually CGI. Like, not the children, but like they're prosthetics. Like the little girls, the single little girl goes, "Mita, can you play with us?" That's a CGI prosthetics, because they said they didn't want to have to put these young children through all this makeup effects. And plus, they're in Morocco, which is a really hot place with these actors, and they have to put like the full. Michael Bailey had to go through hours and hours of prosthetics. And it's over 100 degrees in Morocco, and they said it's really tough. It was a really tough shoot. In fact, they said they couldn't even, if you wanted to go to the bathroom or something, you would have to go in a desert, or you would have to wait for someone to come get you, which is the hotel and all that was way, way, way gone, like an hour there, hour back. They said it was a grueling experience, and sometimes some arguments would happen between like producer Wes Craven and director Alexandra, because I heard that I don't know if there was tension on set, but I heard that from what you sound, like it sounds and everything, that there was some kind of producer, Wes Craven, and director would sometimes clash. I don't know if that's 100%, but it sounds like that's like, because you would hear him on the lyric comment say, "Well, I want to do this," but then Wes said, "Oh, we should do this," and then you can see him just kind of like shrug it off, like, and which I understand, because he's the producer. You're like, I'm trying to make, this is my movie, it's not yours. You made your movie, and I could see that. Which I kind of, and then more fuel sped to the fire when you see that Wes Craven would go on to write a sequel to the remake, and he would even hire a director, and then Alexandra is like, "I'm not doing this sequel, sorry." So I mean, also, which I understand, you just want to make it, kind of make it. Your own thing. You just want to make it, and someone else comes in and says, "Look, this is how it is." That's every filmmaker. That's fine. I will say the plot of the movie is really similar, though. They're going through the desert and everything else, and they end up having the same issues like they had in the first film. Only, like in the original movie, it's like, oh, airplane, it's, oh, they have jets flying by, and like, oh, and then in this one, it's there's barbed wire strips that just strapped and then they crashed right in there. I'm like, it makes more sense in the remake. A lot of stuff makes more sense. And, I will say the music is better. I will say the action is much better. And also you actually see the places they live, the mutants live, are much better and well made. And also this movie's really good. Like, you should go check it out. It's great soundtrack, kick-ass action, great cast. It's awesome. And I'm not trying to dog on the old one, but I feel like this movie's, even though Wes Craven, I'm sure if he would have directed the remake, it would still be good. I'm just saying, like, this movie has a better feel than the old one. And also, it's funny, this is a fun story I forgot to tell you about. The baby, they had a scene, okay, like they did, because they recreated scenes from the old movie, like their scene where the baby, like there's a scene where he holds a gun to a baby's head. It's a little toddler, because he's like trying to fill up on the mom, which I don't know if it's 100% the same scene, but it's kind of the same scene. And like he's trying to fill up on the mom, and he has a gun to the baby's head, basically saying, "If you try to kill me, I'm going to kill the baby." Kind of messed up scene. But like, but then they said the fun thing is, like, even though it's not a real gun, it's a dummy gun. They said the real gun, and in the movie it's a real gun, but like in real life it's not a real gun. They ain't gonna put a real gun to a baby's head. But like, it's a little toy gun. They said the reason they said it was hard for them to do that shot was not because of like the baby crying or anything. It was because the baby kept trying to grab the gun, And it's kind of like, and everyone on the crew just thought that was so adorable. And they're like, it's kind of hard because you can't do that scene, you know. And in fact, you've actually watched the movie. There is a scene where the baby is trying to grab the gun, like at one point. You're like, oh, that's so cute, you know. And it's really funny. It's really good. I mean, this movie is really fun to watch. Around Halloween time, just go watch it. You know, just watch it one time. And I will say, there are similarities to it and there's differences. And I will say the similarities to it is very different. The similarities are the same, but then there's different stuff about it. You know, like there is like there's characters that die in the movie, and I'm not gonna try to spoil the whole movie for you because I think you should go view it as a viewing experience. So that is my review for The Hills Have Eyes. If I had to give it a grade, I would say this is a solid B+ movie.